Welcome to Wines and Wonders with Kirsten Fox. True stories with a side of wine. Looking for inspiration for your life and your wine glass? This is your podcast.
Hello and welcome back to Wines and Wonders. This is Kirsten Fox here with shaman Dannielle Bryan. Good morning, Dannielle.
Good morning, Kirsten.
So excited to talk about our subject today.
Yes.
So I am newly acquainted with the world of shamanism.
Mm-hmm.
And you have obviously been living this a long time. And so I barely have scratched the surface as to what it is, but we thought it might be really helpful for everybody who's listening to these podcasts to know a little bit more about what a shaman really is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily something that many of us, it's not just a job descriptor that many of us have grown up with. And so we're going to explore what's shamanism. And then, of course, at the end, I will be pairing the perfect wine to go with whatever shaman you're talking, whether it's talking to a shaman or it's becoming a shaman yourself.
Mm-hmm.
What wine should you be drinking
this
in the
is
shamanic
so
world?
Exciting.
I don't know if there's ever been a wine paired to a shaman before.
I know. I can't wait to go buy some.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It'll be, and by the way, perfect spring and summer wine.
Oh.
So it'll be something that will be really fun. So let's just dive right in, and will you please tell me what is shamanism?
Yeah. Well, what a great question, Kirsten.
I bet you didn't see that coming.
No, yeah. The word shaman, by definition, means the one who can navigate the spirit realms on behalf of themselves or another. Now, many of us might have heard the word shaman, and most of the time we think about it in the context of a remote tribal village that's still operating as such in life today, and that there's the medicine man or the medicine woman of the village who is the shaman. That's how most of us are probably going to conjure this up if we have any context for it whatsoever. And as I just said, the definition is the one who can navigate the spirit realms on behalf of themselves or another. And so what does that even mean, right? When people ask me what I do and I say I'm a master practitioner of shamanic energy healing, that doesn't tell anybody really what I do, but that would be my official title.
Okay.
And so what I do as a shamanic practitioner in our current life and culture here, our westernized culture, is that I work with clients and they come to me with something that they're wanting a shift with or more perspective on, or they want healing around an issue or a pattern or a trauma, or they want more clarity around why do these certain patterns keep showing up. And remember, actually, our last episode, we talked about repeating patterns,
Right.
And so I work with clients to look at the multidimensional energetic aspect of what's going on. So again, I'm just going to keep referring to the definition of shaman, the one who can navigate the spirit realms on behalf of themselves or another. What that means, what we're talking about when we say that, is that we all innately have the ability to tune into the subtle energetics of what's going on in our lives. But not all of us have honed that skill.
Oh, okay.
Because we are energetic beings. We are energetic beings having a physical human experience is one way that we talk about this, and we come to understand ourselves this way. And we can look at the more mainstream modalities. You know, being a shamanic practitioner has not become what I would say a mainstream modality yet, but it's up and coming from the standpoint of more and more people will say, yeah, I'm really called to working with a shaman, or I worked with a shaman a couple of years ago, or I've heard of shamans, but what do they do? And so it's beginning to be talked about more. But let's look at acupuncture. Okay, acupuncture, which is something that we're all, I would say, quite familiar with, whether you've had it or not,
Sure.
right?
Mm-hmm.
That what they're doing is they are looking at your chi or your chi or ki, Japanese ki, Chinese chi.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
so it's life force energy. They're looking at your energy. They're looking at your vitality. And they're reading your vitality through these channels in your body called meridians. And your meridians hold the life force chi of what is going on in your body, and it's connected to the organs specifically. And then each organ is associated with certain emotional qualities. Right? So when you work with an acupuncturist, they're actually working with your energy body. When you work with Reiki or sound healing or some of these other modalities that you may have heard of, or the chakras, yoga. Let's talk about yoga. That's pretty mainstream. In the yoga teachings, they talk about your prana, your life force energy. Okay. And they talk about it, and we work with, in yoga, we work with the chakra system. Now, this is also becoming more and more familiar. Even if people don't know what it is, they may have heard of it, chakras, right? You can walk into any New Age shop and find chakra flags or chakra stones. And so we have these 7 energy centers that run up the midline of our body, right along the spinal column. And so when we get into what is a shamanic practice, what are we doing? I'm looking at the multidimensional aspect of a person. So we have a physical body, which we obviously can all relate to. We have an emotional body, which we can also relate to. Most of us understand that we have an emotional body. We have emotions that will come over and take hold.
Are you saying something like, if someone walks into a room that I know well, I can look at them and go, what's wrong? Like,
correct.
Something is already, I can feel it, see it. Okay, got it.
Absolutely. That's emotional. That's you intuitively tuning into their emotional body, what's going on with them. And we have a mental body, we have a soul body, we have energetic matrix, the wide expanse of our energy body. And whether we consciously realize it or not, all of us are tuned into this to a certain degree. Some of us have honed the skill to be really fine-tuned into recognizing these different layers of our energy body. We talk about it as, and we actually talk about it as the subtle energy body. The physical body is that overt, gross anatomy, right? There's that term. It's like, it's dense, it's here, we can feel it, we can see it, it's real. Yeah. Quotations.
We can hurt ourselves, right?
Yeah. Okay. But we can hurt ourselves energetically.
And sure, I know I'm doing it all the time, and I probably don't know why.
Right. Go see a shaman.
Yeah.
So we have these subtle energy bodies, and it's in our subtle energy body that we will hold on to patterns, that we'll hold on to old traumas, old hurts, old woundings. We hold on to our history in that way. And this is always in play. We're always getting information through our energetic body. But it's about how tuned into it are we. And this is a great example because we have all experienced this. We've all experienced, well, to your example, Kirsten, so if, a friend walks in a room, I can tell that there's something wrong right away, right? Mm-hmm. So that's tuning into your friend's body. But there's also that place where you can walk into a room and know that somebody was just having an argument without having heard the argument, right? If you walk into a house 10 minutes after the argument happened, it's like you walk into a thick wall, right? And you kind of look around and you're like, what's going on in here? Is everything okay? Right? That's your wise, innate energy body picking up the feedback loop of the energy that's hanging out in the space.
Okay.
Likewise, we all know what it's like to walk into a room where 2 people have been making out, but you didn't see it, but you walk in and you go, what is going on in here? Right? We know the energy, right?
Right.
It's that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. It's buzzy.
It's buzzy. Yeah.
You can feel it, and it's charged. and you know what it's charged
Yes.
with, right? Because you've experienced that somewhere along the way.
Any teenager parents out there relating to this?
You walk into the family room
Yes.
and you're like,
excuse us.
yeah,
Hello.
different seats from
Leaving
here on
the
out.
door open, family and friend.
Yes, right? So that's the power and the subtlety of energetics. So when I'm working with a client and they come in, they have something going on, I'm looking at how it is held in their energy body or their spirit body. We could talk about it that way, but whatever they're working with, how is that affecting them on a physical level? How is that affecting them on a mental level, on an emotional level, on a soul level? This is where we start to get shamany, because now we're looking at the trajectory of your soul experience, which is a different quality than your mental experience. Okay. So many people have had an experience where they think from a mental and emotional level, and I'm going to use career path because it's easy to associate with.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I should probably go down this career path because it pays well and it's good job security and I can work from home and I can whatever those qualities are that a person is looking for, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or no, I don't want to be an entrepreneur because that feels like it's unstable. You never know how you're getting paid. I'd much rather go work for an organization and work 9 to 5 and know that I'm being paid this amount every 2 weeks and I'm looking for that kind of stability, right? Those are mental, emotional, decision-making kinds of things.
Okay.
Now, we all know that sometimes we go through something in our life where there's a pull or a call to do something different that seemingly makes completely no sense whatsoever. It feels like it's way out of context. I'm going to quit my well-paying 9 to 5 job because I want to pursue horticulture. Right.
I mean, we all have friends or ourselves that have done this, and you're like, wait, what?
What? You're going to go grow potatoes?
Right.
Really?
Right.
Yes.
I've always dreamed
of it. I want to. It's a passion of mine. That's a soul calling.
Okay.
It's not a mental process.
Right. You're not going, okay, that job is no longer the right job for me. I'm going to go assess and I'm going to move into potato farming because that is the best option for me in all these mental and financial and all, very, very left brain. Okay.
Yeah. So we all have what we talk about in this field, the evolutionary soul's path. The soul calling. Now, this is becoming more and more talked about. I remember 2 Super Bowls ago watching, famous Super Bowl commercials.
Yay, love them.
And I cannot remember the company. God bless them. I don't remember who it was. But what I do remember most specifically is that within that commercial for that big business, and it was blatant big business, some big corporation that we would all recognize if I could remember who they were, talking about soul. They were talking about the souls. They were using that language in the commercial for this big corporation during the Super Bowl.
Wow.
And I remember sitting on the couch going, right on. It has hit the Super Bowl commercial zone. We are talking about the soul.
Mainstream
right?
U.S. culture.
I applauded all by myself.
You did.
Right on. I can't believe it. We finally are talking about the soul journey within corporations watching the Super Bowl.
Wow.
So it's starting to become a experience and an awareness culturally where we do get to chum it up at lunch break and be like, yeah, I just have the soul calling to go do the whatever. So in my field, in the shamanic practice, this is a lot of what we're looking at. We're looking at the more subtle quality of, are you in alignment with what you're doing? Is your soul actually being nurtured and nourished with what you're doing? And we all know what it's like to be doing something where we love it and we feel in alignment with it versus doing the thing that we're doing that we don't like, that we hate. We've probably all made that experience to some degree or another.
Absolutely.
Right?
When you're doing it for some, oftentimes you're doing it for when you're young, a parent, because you're trying to, what would dad want me to do? And then you're stuck in this thing. Or, if you've got a spouse that has volunteered you, in quotes, for something that you don't want to do, and it's just interminable, instead of when you're doing something that you chose to do and you want to do, and it's almost like a timeless. We did talk about being in the zone and that timelessness, that feeling. So absolutely.
So we look at these aspects and we look at all the different qualities. We look at all the parts that make up the whole of a person's experience and quality. Now, the word shaman comes from a Siberian root language. And so there are many different kinds of shamanic paths. In our culture here in America, in North America, we might think about the shamans of North American, Native American tribes.
When I first heard the word, that's exactly where I went.
Right, because that's in our culture, right? And we have
medicine man,
around
medicine
it.
woman.
Yes,
I mean, that's where it was.
And so, every indigenous culture has its roots shamanically, because a shamanic path is an earth medicine path. A shamanic path means that we remember that we live in an animated world with all of nature and all of spirit, that we're connected to the earth, Mother Earth, Gaia, Great Goddess. In the shamanic path that I practice is rooted in South American traditions, in the Andean traditions of Peru. And we talk about Mother Earth as Pachamama. That's what we call her, Pachamama. But other cultures refer to her as Gaia, the Great Goddess, Earth Mother, Mother Earth, and I'm sure there's other words within their languages that I don't know. But there are many different shamanic paths. So there's many shamanic paths even within North American native traditions. So you have your Hopi Nation and your Navajo Nation and your Shoshone Nation and your Lakota Sioux Nation and your Iroquois nations, right? And so each one of those nations would have their own version of what their shamanic path is. They work with their own animal archetypes that are specific to them. There's Celtic Irish shamanism. There is African shamanism, and many tribes within Africa. It's a big continent, right? Aboriginal shamanism of Australia, Aboriginal shamanism, the Maori of New Zealand, Mongolian shamanism, Russian shamanism. I mean, it's endless. The Inuits, the Alaskans, they have their own shamanic paths, and the Polynesians in Hawaii and Samoa. I mean, we could go on, right? And recognize that all of these native and indigenous cultures, the common thread is that they live connected to the land. They recognize that Earth is her own wise sentient being, that you can commune with the rivers and the trees and the animals and the mountain spirits and the wind and the sun, and right. So they live in an animated world where they see the spirit of all things, and they see the spirit in each person, and they recognize that the spirit of each person is infinite and timeless. And the shaman of the tribe, or the medicine man or the medicine woman of the tribe, recognizes that they can commune with the spirit essence of another person to help restore balance or health to that person, because it's not just about what's going on in their liver.
Right. Like where Western medicine and healing took it into what is the physical thing wrong in the body, and really, I think it sounds like, quite purposefully ignored any of the spiritual aspect of things, the non-physical. It's
Correct.
like, I don't know why this is happening, but it's happening.
It's
so let's give you a pill so it doesn't happen anymore.
Or let's do surgery and take it out of your body.
Right.
I've seen that happen.
Right.
Yeah. I had a client who had a really strange platelet disease, and they wanted to take his spleen out, and didn't know why, and they wanted to, but they said that they have found that helps with this condition.
Okay.
That was the answer.
Okay.
It seems to help some people with this condition, so we'll just take your spleen out.
Okay.
And they said, I don't know that I'm game for that. There wasn't a big enough percentage of, yes, this is actually really, really helpful to be losing your spleen. And anyway, we ended up doing some work, and in the healing modality that I do when I work with clients, there are many modalities within a session that may or may not happen, that go under the umbrella of shamanic healing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those might be doing extractions of intrusive energies, which simply means that as an energetic being, we will pick up energy that is not of our essence. Okay, it's like furniture collecting dust. You don't actually watch it happen, but you see the byproduct. You see the dust on the furniture at the end of the week or whatever.
Yes.
Right? And you realize, like, wow, that furniture has been collecting the dust and the debris that's been in the room that I don't see, but now I do because it's collected on this piece of furniture.
So this isn't like overwhelming Linda Blair exorcist head just coming in, boom. It's like a slow developing kind of a thing usually.
It can be a slow developing kind of thing. And so we can end up picking up energy that is not of our essence.
Okay.
So anyway, we end up doing this extraction of intrusive energy out of her field, and it completely changed the physical response that she was having. The platelet condition went away.
Oh, wow.
Right. So there's so much that is held in that energetic space that we do give credence to it, but it's not talked about in everyday kind of conversation when we're looking at somebody and looking at their overall well-being and saying, okay, well, if this is going on, what that tells me is that you're out of alignment.
Mm-hmm.
You're out of congruence with yourself. Now, is that because we need to change your diet, literally? Physically? Are you eating food that's bringing you out of alignment?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you spiritually out of alignment? And when I say spiritual, I want to quickly say that, the spiritual aspect of somebody is independent of what religion are you or not religion. Okay, it's
okay, because I've got a burning question.
It's not about, being spiritual is not about being a religion. You can be very spiritual within a religion, and you can be very much within a religion and not be spiritual. So what are we talking about when we say the spiritual aspect of somebody? And it's about the connection that person has with themselves and with the higher power. And we could call that God, and we could call it Allah, and we could call it Great Creator, and we could call it the universe, and we can call it Great Spirit, or we can call it Father Cosmos, there's so many ways that we can talk about that higher power, and to be connected to that higher power is to actually have that spirit moving through you, which gives us the word spiritual. So you can be very much on a spiritual path and be in a religion, and the two could be wedded. And when I was doing my training 15 years ago, I saw Catholic priests come through our training. I saw rabbis come through our training. We had bishops of the LDS Mormon Church come through the training. And so, we had these people who are steeped in their religion who also understood that they could continue to deepen their relationship with the understanding of themselves and who they are as wise, innate, multidimensional, energetic beings. So this is not shamanism is not a religion. Shamanism is actually a way in which you engage life and you engage your surroundings and you engage yourself. And so it's open to anybody, and it doesn't come with a set of rules that says, okay, if you're going to practice this path, then this is how you be a good shaman. You need to do this, and you need to show up to this temple on this day, or this church on this day, or You need to have these ceremonies, and a lot of religions have that kind of structure. And it works for a lot of people, and it doesn't work for a lot of people. So I'm not one way or another on that, just to be clear.
All that hate mail pulling up. No, not hate mail. Certainly not. Just all those questions that may come to us. So, okay, as you're describing, the religious people who were a part of these spiritual education.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I grew up in a family that was like so steeped in realism. There was nothing that wasn't real. Like everything was real. Everything was planned. There were no things left to chance.
Mm-hmm.
It was very directed. And so as you're describing, this whole, by the way, personally, when I started this journey, it has added such a dimension to my life that I never even knew existed.
Mm-hmm.
It was just ignored. In fact, I remember the first woman that ever even talked to me. She was this older woman. My dad was a lawyer, and it was one of his older clients. Aunt Hazel, we ended up calling her. She had no kids, and she would come to our family gatherings, for Thanksgiving, Christmas dinners, those kinds of things, and Easter. And so she was around a lot. And she was obviously from a different family, so she had a very different approach to life.
Mm-hmm.
And she and I would talk, and it was the first person, she was the first person to tell me about the power of your subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave me this book that was like written in, I don't even know, 1940. And it was hysterically, it's just so funny, the terminology and the way it's written, but it was called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. And I was just headed off to college, and she said, you should read this because so much of what happens in your life is what you believe about what's going to happen in your life. And it was the first really ever discussion about anything, because I just went to church because my parents were Episcopalians and we'd have to go. I didn't want to go. I wasn't listening to the prayers. I wasn't singing the songs with joy in my heart. I was like, get through it so I can get on to doing something else. And so Aunt Hazel brought this whole experience. So that was early college, and I kept that book, and I would refer to it. And it luckily for me, so I was so steeped in realism, it had specific examples of someone. For example, I remember this father saying his daughter was sick, and he kept saying he would give his right arm, and which I guess used to be a saying, or left arm or something. It was like, I'd give my right arm to have her be well. And he ended up being in a car crash and losing his arm, whichever arm he was talking about. And his daughter got well. And so that was like this book, and this Aunt Hazel and all this was so special to me. And so I'm hearing you saying now, as you're describing the fact that a rabbi and a priest and these people are actually continuing to examine their relationship with the spiritual world in a shamanic way, rather than what I take in as religion. This is actually someone who has a religion that kind of is a framework, but they're continuing on that spiritual path. Is this someone, so will you tell me, are these people, rabbis, priests, whoever, are you guys innately, is this an innate thing that you are, that people can't just pick this up? This is someone who's been born to it. They're gonna pick it up, and that's the way it is.
No, what we're talking about is innate in every single human on the planet. We are talking about recognizing that we are energetic, multidimensional beings. We all have the capacity to hone and develop our awareness and the skill set, frankly, of being able to recognize ourselves, to look at our energetic anatomy, to understand ourselves as these complex, multidimensional beings, to hone the ability to tune into these more subtle aspects of ourselves, and to develop our intuition, our intuitive nature, to be tuned into that aspect of ourselves. We all have the capability of it, because that is our makeup. Now, with that said, Kirsten, anybody can step onto a path and do this work and study and learn. And as a matter of fact, I just finished a course yesterday where I had 15 practitioners who are learning how to facilitate and help other people in their own growth and in their own healing. And, I had a wide range of people who are quite familiar with energetics and understanding ourselves that way, and who have maybe already do some form of energy healing or who have dabbled in it, all the way to somebody who's never done it in a structured sense, but has come to realize, oh, that's what I do all the time anyway. And so it's recognizing that we can all hone the skill set. We can all learn to do something. And with that said, some of us are wired, I suppose, in a way where we can pick it up easier than others, right? We could all learn to play the violin if we wanted to, but we're not all going to be a violin virtuoso.
Okay.
Right. We could all probably go take gymnastics classes, but we're not all going to be, as graceful as some of these gymnasts we see doing these amazing things.
Right.
And so there are, just like any gifted person in their field of whatever they're excelling at and doing, we all walk that spectrum, but we can all learn it. And so I've been doing this long enough and been in classrooms long enough to see where people naturally come into it, and they've already have awoken that part of themselves where it's easy for them to start to intuit and read another person's energetic field. It's really easy for them. And some people, it's harder for them because they have to kind of unlearn all the conditioning that says that you don't know how to do this. And they have to kind of unlearn that and wake up to the part of them that has always known how to do it. And for some people, that feels a little more challenging than it does with other people. But anybody can step into this work. Anybody can come into this path, because it's really about a deep discovery of self and tuning into that place within yourself and understanding yourself from that multidimensional perspective. And what does that mean when I say that? That multidimensional perspective means that there are different dimensions of yourself that you begin to recognize that make up the whole of who you are. And so when we talk about the physical body, the mental body, the emotional body, the soul body, the energetic matrix. Now, when I talk about the energetic matrix, I'm talking about the blueprint of frequency that is your organizing pattern of how you move through the world. And we can tune into all these subtle aspects and learn how to get the information of what's going on within ourselves. And it's a fascinating journey of exploration. And you're never done. You never hit that level of like, okay, now I'm done. There's always more to discover and to learn about yourself, and to recognize that nothing has to change. You're perfectly divine as you are, and anything and everything can change.
So I am trying, that's amazing. This is amazing. So I'm also curious, each of us is we are humans. Mm-hmm. You're a human. Mm-hmm. As much as I think you're a goddess of everything, right? No, but you're human. Yeah. And you are approaching another person as a professional. So I've been working on myself. Mm-hmm. I'm not working on other people. So right. Here you are, you're a human. Mm-hmm. Obviously you're very well trained. So mm-hmm. You've been through a lot, but how do you not bring yourself, your feelings, your things to someone else, mm-hmm. And overlay those? Yeah. I think I've done that probably daily for each of my children, and I need to call and apologize for all that. But how do you do that? How do you separate that?
We call that projection, or in your terminology, which is easier probably to actually visualize it, but to overlay our stuff onto another person. And how you do that, there's a couple pieces to that. We talked a lot about that actually in this class that I just taught, because it's huge. It's gigantic. I cannot impress upon you enough how much we want to have awareness about where we are overlaying our stuff on another person or projecting our stuff on another person, and how if we're doing that, we are actually not seeing that person clearly for who they are.
Sure.
We're actually seeing some projected version of ourselves, and we're overlaying it onto another person. And so how do we check ourselves and make sure we're not doing that? Number one, know thyself, know thyself, know thyself. Okay? So if we are willing to take a deep dive discovery of who we really are in all the nooks and crannies of what makes up our constitutional beingness, then we will recognize when we're overlaying our stuff onto another person, right? And an example of this, we do this with our kids. I think that's an easiest way to give an example, is to say, oh, honey, I don't think you want to do that. You might hurt yourself. That's your lens.
Right.
I mean, unless we're talking about running into a highway. Okay, we're not
a 3-year-old
here.
that really doesn't understand
Correct.
things.
But
yes.
We're talking about maybe like our 10-year-old who's out there building his little jump out in the street to ride his bike over his little jump that he's building, right? And he's just like going to town. He's loving it, or she, whatever. Yeah. And we're sitting on the front porch going, ooh, I don't think that's a good idea. You don't want to do that. You're going to hurt yourself. Are they thinking that, or are you thinking that? That's an overlay. Now, that's an overt example of we do this all the time, everywhere.
My daughter, all my kids have had very extensive therapy because I'm their parent, and we've been through a lot all together, and I want to make sure they understand what's going on and aren't taking this in a bad way into their future, right? Whatever's going on. But one of the therapists used an example of this, and she was saying she had a friend. So this is the therapist, right? She's a trained woman, very good therapist, family therapist. And she's talking to a friend at the friend's house when we could do that, and she was over at the friend's house, and the youngest son, so this is the youngest of 3 sons, he was about 4, she remembered. He's on the stairs of the house, and he's about on the 10th stair up. And he says, as they're standing in the living room, my friend, this therapist, and the other woman, the mom, I'm going to jump. And this is the therapist says to me, my God, I was just like, my gut reaction was, no, you're not. Like, he's not even my son. And I'm like, no, you're not. That's ridiculous. And she goes, and then my friend, this mom, said, can you land it? And the kid's like looking at her and looks at the stairs and looks at the mom, and he came down 5 steps. And he goes, I'm going to do this. And she's like, can you land it? And he goes, yes. And she goes, all right. And so he jumped and, did the full, like, whatever, superhero kind of roll out of it. And he stood up and he was so excited. But my friend, the therapist, this woman, said, I learned so much because that was my fear that I was projecting onto him. And I thought that was such a beautiful example of not necessarily just honoring what that kid needs to explore. Right. By way of that projection that my friend was doing for her friend's friend, like her friend's son. So, yeah. So can we know ourselves well enough to recognize, oh, that's my fear. Yeah. That might not be your fear. And we learn those things through a deep exploratory process of getting to know ourselves. And so that's one way. How do we not do this? The other way is to recognize, so for me in my profession, as I'm working with people, how do I make sure that I'm not projecting my stuff onto my client? And we talk about this in our training, is to become a clear channel, a clear conduit. We hone the skill of being able to read
another person's energy field for exactly what is going on in their field, so that we learn how to, we call it in what I do, we call it tracking. Okay, so tracking energy or reading energy or intuiting energy, it's all kind of the same thing. So we learn how to track another person's field cleanly as we are clear conduits, clear channels connected to divine source energy. And this is a skill set that we hone to be able to be in touch with the client and read cleanly what is their stuff that's going on, not our stuff.
Yes.
We don't overlay it. And with that said, I have to make a asterisk and highlight the fine print of what I'm talking about here. The fine print of what I'm talking about is, we are all intuitive. Just your example of a friend walking into a room and you being able to say, "Oh my God, what's going on? Are you okay?" Right? That's you picking up on the energetics of what's happening. And you get to ask the question, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And they get to answer the question. We don't want to be running around through the world developing our skill set of being able to read another person's energy body and then be doing that without permission, without asking the question first. So that crosses an ethical line into the land of peeping Tom.
Okay.
Just like we wouldn't go around and think it's okay to peek into somebody's windows at night and watch them.
Right.
We don't want to be, walking through the grocery store and picking out our target and deciding, like, let me see if I can read what's going on in their energy field. So I just need to say that high level as we're talking about this, because I'm a stickler for the ethics and integrity for our innate skill set to be in tune with another person's field. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think it's time for a break.
All right.
Wow. Take a sip of coffee. I'm going to go just relax a little bit here. No, we'll be right back, you guys. Just stay tuned. And we're going to come back with a wrap up of the discussion of what shamanism is and then what kind of wine should we be pairing with shamans and the whole shamanic practice. Stay tuned. Have you ever had a friend call you in tears as she explains what she's going through, and you get off the phone and you feel like you just have to do something? Well, there is a company called Uplift Gift that is here for all of us to use when we get those kinds of calls. They have all sorts of different comforting items that they package up in beautiful wrapping and send to your friend, along with a handwritten card from you in the box so that she feels your love from far away. Uplift Gift, when words aren't enough.
Now, what wine will Kirsten choose for your table tonight? Here she is.
Welcome back, you guys. So happy to have you here. We're talking about what is shamanism with Dannielle Bryan. And I'm going to tell you that her website is shamanictwist.com. And that is why I love her so much, because I know you've probably got friends, and God bless them for who they are, but they're constantly talking about what the spiritual energy is and telling you should be lighting, different essences in your house and whatever. And, it's not realistic. And I just love that my friend Dannielle, who came into my life, is a shaman that's like a bit realistic. So she can actually bridge between the shamanic world and my world of realism. And so if you're interested in knowing more just about, I just love Shamanic Twist, fits you so well, Dannielle, because it's a twist on the shamanic world and the energetic world. And it also hits so, you got a practical, talking about the stuff building up in your chakras as dust on a table is like, oh, I can totally get that now. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that. Yes. So I've got the final question and then we'll move into the wine. When did you find, how did you discover this?
Oh, yeah, that question. Well, to straight up answer that specific question of when did I discover this path, this shamanic path, it was 15 years ago. It was 2005. So actually, gosh, it's 16 years ago now. My birthday in the land of shamans. So 16 years ago. And I came into it by accident,
What
actually.
happened? We would always say by purpose, because somebody's up there orchestrating this.
Right. It's divine orchestration, for sure. But, I'll tell you what happened. But also, when I was a kid, I used to live in this world where I understood energy, and I used to travel to different realms and different dimensions. But, I was just a kid. I just thought that was like normal kid stuff.
So like imagination, you'd be like, I'm a princess on level 12.
Yeah, kind of. But it was a little bit more like, I'm going to go out to my swing set and I'm going to open my energy field and talk to God.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Okay. And then when I was in high school, I started to be able to see auras and see colors, and I thought that was normal. Until I realized, no, my friends weren't all doing that. And it is normal. So it's not to say it's not normal. It just wasn't what everybody else had going on.
Sure, they weren't tuning in.
Yeah. And that kind of set me on a trajectory. When I was probably about 15, I got into essential oils and I started to learn about crystals. And then when I was 18, I came into being initiated into Reiki, which is another energetic lineage and practice. And then I was hooked from there. And then I started to really learn about chakras. And then when I was 21, I think, I went to a massage school, and that was my formal training as a massage therapist, but it was really heavy on the energetics and understanding that kind of world and that realm. Anyway, so I woke up to this intuition, and I had the ability to sense what was going on in a person's body as a massage therapist, and recognize that they had stuff going on in their field, but that it wasn't helpful to say to somebody, hey, you got a whole bunch of trauma stuck in your second chakra, and good luck with that. I hope you can sort that stuff out. And so at least, thank God, I had enough bandwidth and awareness to know that that's not helpful ever to say that to somebody without giving them a context in which to move through
Sure.
it. Right? So anyway, so this had been going on for years, and I had a friend who was training with an organization called the Four Winds Society, which is a wonderful organization that is all rooted in the South American Andean traditions of shamanism. That's how I came to study this particular lineage. And a lineage, let me just clarify, a lineage is it's the history, it's the lineage of a people or a culture. We could look at something and recognize it comes from the Chinese lineage or the Japanese lineage. And this particular shamanic path is an Andean lineage. And it goes back into the Incan civilization and pre-Incan. I mean, we're talking about a practice and a body of wisdom that has been evolving and shared and passed down for well over 5,000 years. So anyway, I had a girlfriend who was studying and in the school with the Four Winds Society, and they were doing a private retreat and wanted to hire me as a massage therapist to come in and do this retreat and do massages for these people who signed up for this intensive retreat that they were doing. And it happened to be at the same time that they were teaching one of their core classes. So it was happening here in Utah where we live, which was a blessing. And they had this private retreat that was its own thing going on. And they simultaneously had one of their big training classes that was going on. It was happening in the same week. And so, I say, yes, that's fine. I take all the time off. My son was 2 years old at the time, and orchestrate my whole life to be available for this week-long retreat. And 2 days before it was supposed to happen, they called me up and said, we're so sorry, we're not having the private retreat. And I know that you rearranged your life, blah, 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 but we'd like to offer you to come take this class if you would like to. It's as thank you and we're sorry. And, I had kind of heard about shamanism, but not really a lot. I didn't really know anything about it. Again, it was just one of those words that you hear somewhere out there. And it was in context, for me, my understanding and context of shamanism was around soul retrieval. That's probably a terminology that if anybody has dipped their big toe into the land of shamanic work and energetics, they've heard the terminology soul retrieval. And so that's the context in which I had heard it. And actually, I had a session with a woman some years prior who said to me, it was an astrology reading, actually. And she's reading my chart, right? And she's looking at it and she goes, you would do really well to study soul retrieval or something in the shamanic realm. And that's the first time I had ever heard it. And this was a couple of years prior to this whole thing happening. And it kind of went in one ear and out the other because I had no real context for it. And I just kind of nodded like sometimes you do with those things like, oh, yeah, fascinating. Yeah, right.
But is there a cute guy around the next corner?
Exactly.
That's what I want to know.
So anyway, here I am showing up to this class, this shamanic class, and I find myself sitting in a room with all these people. I mean, really, there were like 80 of us. And I remember sitting in the back of the room, and the teacher comes in and starts teaching about, this particular modality that we were going to learn that day in this particular class and this shamanic path and what is shamanism and all this stuff. And I'm sitting in the back of the room thinking, well, that's interesting. Like, I haven't really heard about this kind of stuff before. I have no idea what I'm even doing here. Landed myself in a level 2 class. It was a level 2 class. It wasn't even level 1. Like, I passed go right into level 2. And so I'm sitting there. And after about 3 days, I'm thinking, because it was a 7-day course, but the first 3 days were its own little teachings, and you could leave after that, or you could stay on and take the extended version, right? So it's almost like level 1, level 2 within this level 2 class. So I'm sitting in the back of the room, and I'm like, I don't know. This has been interesting, but I don't really know if this is really for me, if this is my thing or not. And we do this one exercise, and I do the exercise and the whole thing, and out of 80 people, the teacher, and I'm in the back of the room, right? I'm hiding in the back of the room. And the teacher looks and she goes, Dannielle, you want to come up and be our demo? And I was like, oh,
great.
Okay, sure. So I go up and we talk about whatever the exercise was. And, here I am 25 minutes into being the demo for this exercise. And I'm a mess in the front of the room and I'm bawling. And all of a sudden I'm like, wow, maybe there's something to this. Right there. Obviously, I got some stuff going on. Maybe I should start paying attention. And as they say, Kirsten, the rest is history.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was enough to change.
It changed everything because all of a sudden I started to realize there was aspects of myself that I really needed to pay attention to and look at. And as I stayed on for the remainder of the week, it was the way the week was split up is the first 3 days were kind of your personal healing track. So looking at yourself and what's going on. And the last 4 days of this 7-day week was the practitioner training aspect and the skill sets of, how do you now take what we're learning and apply it into a professional track where you can help other people. And all of a sudden, now remember, I'm a massage therapist. I've taken Reiki and I've done shiatsu training and some cranial sacral and la, 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 la. So I had some modalities under my belt. I had a client practice, and all of a sudden it's like everything clicked. And what I was learning were the tools that I needed to be able to effectively help people because I was naturally picking up on what was going on. Right? All that stuff where it's like, hey, you got a whole bunch of trauma stuck in your second chakra. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
That, all of a sudden, I was like, whoa, this is a tool that you can use to help the person move through it. This is a tool I can use to help a person move through it. This is a tool I can use to help see what's really going on with the client. And everything aligned. And it was this like,
Right.
kind of moment of like, this is it.
Oh.
This is what I've been looking for, and I didn't even know it. And so it was so divinely orchestrated, and that was 16 years ago, and here I am. I'm still doing it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh. I did not know that's what the whole story was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
God bless you for I'm glad that they had to cancel that. So you had to go into that session.
I know.
Because the gifts that you've given, certainly just directly to me, just to speak of one person, have been immense. So yay, we're all happy about that. Now I'm going to give you my gift.
Yes. What wine can I drink within my professional track? Yes.
So as I was preparing for this, I was trying to figure out what is shamanism in a taste? Like, what does it mean? How does shamanism taste to me? And I'd heard you say the definition of shamanism quite a few times before, so I knew it was about the energetics of a situation. That's really where I took it. I'll tell you it's just energetics because I don't remember anything else you've said, but that's where I went with it. Like, what? So then I sat there and I was like, what kind of wine has a lot of energy in it? And what does that mean to me? What is an energy in a wine? And so I came to two typical characteristics of wines that I think have a lot of energy in them, because I found that when I have a high acid wine in my mouth is watering. It's like the feel. Okay, for just to take it out of the wine world, it's like if you had a lemon and you bit into it, you're going to be awake the next minute. Right. You're like, hello, right? Everything's kind of firing, and it's high acid. And the other thing that I think of as high acid is when a wine has bubbles in it.
Ooh.
Because of those, it's movement in the wine without me even moving it. It's moving. And so those two things. So then I thought, certainly I love sparkling wine and champagne, but we talked a lot about that. So what wine would I look for that's very high acid and has bubbles in it that isn't what we've gone over before? And I came to Portuguese Vinho Verde. And that is spelled Vinho, and then the new word, Verde. Vinho Verde. Now, it is a specifically Portuguese wine, and it's made from a variety of different grapes out of Portugal. Most of these we don't know, but from a list, like the reds are made from Azal and Vinho and Espadrillo. I mean, these are like random, right? But you can get Vinho Verde from Portugal in red and white bottles, and it is grown in the northern part of Portugal, very close to where it intersects with Spain. So it's in the northern part, and the way they grow these grapes is just brilliant, because back when the Portuguese these are all Portuguese varietals, and they were, they were finding that if you squeezed the grapes and made wine, they liked it, right? But you can't live on wine alone, contrary to what many of my friends think, and me at times. Can't live by wine alone. So they had to grow crops as well. So they would take these grapes and they would train them up pergolas, which are a lifted trellis above where their products would grow, their grapes, their tomatoes, their green peppers, all those kinds of things. Plus, they used, as time went along, they used infrastructure that the Portuguese were adding, like telephone towers. Like they'd train them up telephone towers and all of these. So there are these vines growing, and they harvest them And the way they make this wine is, remember, and I've talked about this before, but I'm going to refresh your memory. When the grape is squeezed, the juice runs out. It's sweet. It tastes really like sweet, sweet, sweet Welch's grape juice. It's like sweet grape juice. But they let it sit there on the skins of the grapes, and yeast are present on the skins of the grapes, or they introduce additional yeast. The yeast start eating the sugar. Byproduct, alcohol and carbon dioxide. Okay, so what the Portuguese do is they stop the fermentation very quickly, a very short fermentation. So the yeast haven't had a chance to eat all the sugar. So Vinho Verde is often got sweetness in it. Yet, so there's a slight bit of sweetness, but there are bubbles in it, and they cap it. And so you've got this wine that is it's very acidic. It's got a lot of acid in it from the grapes they're using. But the glass will have not only the bubbles, but also a titch of sweetness. It is like sipping the perfect gin and tonic on the deck at 5:00 before dinner on a beautiful spring or summer day. It is just beautiful. And they make them, like I said, in red and white styles. So some of the red will actually have a bit of tannin, a little bit more of that bitterness that you get from the skins and the seeds of the grapes, because the juice sits on the skins and the seeds longer. Pick up that color, right? So you want them to be very young. Like they bottle this, and you want to be drinking it a maximum of 2 years after bottling. So you want it to be very young. And what's great, as we all as many of us try to decrease our alcohol consumption after being alone at home for a year when it didn't matter and we weren't going anywhere, the maximum amount of alcohol that a Vinho Verde is allowed to have and be called Vinho Verde is 11.5%, which is younger than, less alcohol than most of the wines that we're drinking, a table wine. Most alcohol content on our table wines around between 12 and 14%.
Right.
But if you remember then, the yeast are in there eating the sugar. If they don't have as much time to eat the sugar, you're leaving a little sweetness, but also there's not as much time to create the alcohol, the higher alcohol. So that is, and I'm not going to choose a brand because Vinho Verde is a challenging brand or a challenging type of wine to find in liquor stores. So I just want you to be able to go into your liquor store and say, I'm looking for something called Vinho Verde, which, by the way, means young wine. If you know Spanish, like many of us do in the United States, verde is green. So it does mean green wine,
green, young.
But green as in young, not green as in green.
Right.
So that is the wine that I think would be perfect to maybe what we'll have. I think Fox School of Wine will have to sponsor your next medicine wheel program, and like the final night, everyone can celebrate with a Vinho Verde.
Oh, I love that, Kirsten. That's so great.
That would be really fun.
That would. You know what I love about what you shared about this wine, and I'm going to relate it back to shamanism in this particular path that I practice, the South American traditions, the Andean traditions, is that they use things to grow their grapes like telephone poles and, things that are just your everyday objects where it's like, hey, we could let some vines grow up here, right? So in the tradition that I study, and particularly within the Caro Nation, which are the high mountain peoples of Peru, they have this saying that, we want to come into our spiritual practice and our medicine practice, and we want to make it tangible. We want to be able to grow corn with it. This is a statement that they talk about. You have to be able to grow corn with it. Like, it's one thing to talk about, we can track and read people's energies, and we can call on to the 4 directions and the archetypes of Sachamama, which is serpent, and jaguars and hummingbirds and condors, but we have to be able to grow corn with it. It's not enough to just be like, yo, to the winds of the south, big snake medicine, come on in and work with me. Like, what the hell does that mean, right? You got to grow corn with it. So I love that in Portugal, they were growing corn with their vines, right? They were
Right.
saying like, yeah, I don't have a trellis, but I've got a telephone pole in my backyard. Like that'll work, right? And that
working with what you've got,
working with what you've got,
making a resource,
yes,
like interact with you. It's a yin and yang.
Yeah, and to work with like your surroundings and what is available, and how do we take that and turn it into something exceptional. And I love that, because that is such a big principle in this medicine path. We have to grow corn with it. We have to make it tangible. And in this path, we talk about the sweetness of Pachamama. And we do these ceremonies where we actually, if you have wine, there's a ceremony called a despacho ceremony, and it's to honor the sweetness of Mother Earth and our reciprocity that she gives us, and what do we give her. And traditionally, in a despacho ceremony, they will pour a little bit of red wine onto Pachamama to honor her in the sweetness. So the fact that it's a little bit sweet is so great. And then we use white wine to honor and call on the lineage and the spirits of the Apus, which are the mountains. And so we use the white wine to honor the spirit of the mountains and the wisdom that comes from the stars to the tops of the mountain peaks that then runs down the rivers of the mountains, and we can drink from the rivers of knowledge. And the sweetness of Pachamama and the red wine that we feed her so that we can be in right reciprocity with Mother Earth. So, Kirsten.
Sweet. We did it. Give me a high five on that. All right. Well, you guys, continuing to enlighten ourselves, apparently. But also, we hope you've had fun today and learned a lot about shamanism and a new wine to try.
Yeah.
We will see you back in another time.
Yeah.
All right. Ciao.
We look forward to sharing a new story and wine with you next time. Thanks for tuning in to Wines and Wonders.